All right, hey everyone. I'm joined today by Linda Lebrun from Substack, and we are going to be talking about kind of Substack for everything that everyone knows that Substack has been doing lately, which is a ton of new publishers have shown up, a lot of newsletters out there. There's a lot of things with discoverability there and people getting new leads. It's really interesting. Email deliverability, just lots of stuff. So, Linda, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. Really great to get a chance to talk to you and talk to your audience.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's been following Substack obviously for a few years now as it's kind of exploded onto the scene. So what do you do there? And just kind of, if you would mind introducing yourself a little bit for everybody.
For sure. So I work on the writer partnerships team, and people will probably know Substack is mostly engineers who build the product, and it's DIY. Anybody can come and build a Substack. But we do have a team within Substack that's about 10 of us who try to reach out to people who we think might be a good fit for the Substack model. And my job, my specific vertical, is to talk to people who write about or do podcasts about or do videos about finance, investing, business, leadership, trading, macroeconomics. That whole set of publishers is my set, and it's a really great set of people to be talking to and a great group of publishers to be recruiting to the platform. So a lot of my job is it's an outreach job. We call it a sales job, is actually trying to get new people to come on since we're still a startup. And then there's another component that is really writer development, talking to people who are on the platform, helping them to make sure that they're using all the tools, like the discovery tools, like chat, some of the stuff we're going to talk about in this conversation, helping them use it to best effect.
Nice, nice. And for anyone who's like, oh, I send my own email and everything, just remember, like, Bill Bonner's on Substack, founded Agora. And I think there's a lot of interesting things to me that, I've talked to several publishers now who have newsletters on Substack and kind of started there. People who've gotten maybe to, 500,000 to 1 million, maybe 1.5 million. And I noticed that in my conversations with them that quite a few of them are like, 20 to 30% of their paid customers actually are just from the Substack platform sending them their way. So the reason I bring that up is for anyone who's listening, who's like, I'm not interested in this. The thing that I think is really worth exploring here is, the reason that we have the front end product model is essentially that you're going to use this to identify a customer, build a relationship with them by delivering it. And the cost is there to help subsidize the cost of acquisition, which is usually paid media. And so it seems to me that there's a possibility here for some people to come here and say, I'm going to put this product on Substack. And I'm really going after that discoverability in order to get a larger user base in addition to the other things that I'm doing. And so that piece to me, because a lot of our audience has more established businesses. There's a lot of people who are in the Substack kind of like, I've just started in the last year or two as well. But I just want to put that out there for anyone who's listening, who's like, oh, I don't need to listen to this, but I think there's an opportunity here.
The fact that you mentioned Bill Bonner, it's a name I drop all the time because I think it does bring some credibility to people who might think, oh, well, there's traditional FinPub and then there's Substack and never the twain shall meet. There are a lot of people who come from traditional and what you would call traditional investment newsletter publishing who are using Substack now. And that's the number one reason. There is the ease of use benefit, and there is the things you were paying people for. You can just outsource it to Substack, and all the engineers I mentioned are working for you if you do. But the bigger thing is the discoverability. And I would say I've been at Substack for 3.5 years, and since the first day I came, the number one thing that writers were asking for was help new people find me and find my work and put it in front of people for whom it's going to be relevant. So Substack was never going to be something like YouTube, where you go on YouTube and YouTube is giving you this continuous feed of stuff. Well, how about this? How about that? And on YouTube, you never own your territory. You come and say, okay, I'm forsaking any kind of ownership. I know this can be taken away at any time, but I know that I trust that I'm going to be put in front of people for whom it's relevant. On Substack, we always did have the principle that if you are a Substack publisher, you own your email list, you own the payment relationships, and you own the content. Nothing is shared with us. And when you make that big promise, you can't be advertising other people's publications on people's Substacks without explicit permission. So we had to figure out, how do we do discovery and ownership and combine it at the same time? So we think that we have built a set of levers where it's very opt-in. Like writers and readers can choose to share, can choose to, and we can get into the specifics of tools like recommendations or cross-posting. There are specific things, and the writers who have really used Substack very well and built big businesses there, like the Bill Bonners and the Doombergs, the Danielle DiMartino Boost, people like this are the ones that have really like pulled a lot of those levers. And they really do find that they get 20, 30 and more % of their audience from the Substack network. There's still every time a publisher is going to be their own best advertiser and best marketer, but we have very aligned incentives to want to help, because the only way we make money is our fee, which is a percentage of whatever money people make on the platform. There's no upfront fee with Substack. We only make money if people come and eventually make money. So we have really focused for the past 2 years, I'd say it's really been a strong focus on how do we help people get more discoverability, because that is the toughest thing, and the thing that people struggle with the most, and people want to see from us as a partner the most.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's huge. It's like from pretty much any internet publishing business, it's the thing, really. Because without it, you don't have anything. So how does it, so let's talk about like, how does it work? You say 20 to 30% for publishers. And just to give people an idea of the scale of some of the publishers on here, what are kind of the upper ends of what the financial side of the business is generating there?
Yeah, I can kind of give, I can give sort of the broad strokes, and I can also give a little bit of inside baseball as to how people can tell, how big a Substack is. So to give a sense of proportion, I asked my colleagues on the communications team, okay, what's our latest data? And I believe they said it was the top 20 Substacks make a combined gross income of $25 million, something like that. So people can picture there's a power law distribution, like everything on the internet. You have a small group of publishers who are disproportionately focused on politics and finance topics. Again, not a surprise, who are making many millions of dollars. And in some cases, those will be newsrooms of people, groups of employees. Then you have sort of this middle section of people who by and large are one person operations, or sometimes it'll be a duo, but it'll be smaller teams. And so there is a big group of people, there are many thousands, who are making anywhere from sort of a replacement household income, which the initiation of Substack was so that journalists could be able to have some kind of an independent income on their own. And then all the way up to sort of portfolio managers and people running fairly complex businesses, multiple people, and it can be millions of dollars. When you go on a Substack and you look at the welcome page that comes up for a Substack, it will, unless the author has chosen to not have that display, it'll show how many subscribers that Substack has. That will be all inclusive of both free and paid subscribers. As with all things with this type, it's a funnel. You have your free signups, you try to make them become paid. But a lot of Substacks you will also see, again, unless the publisher has chosen to take this off, you'll see a check mark. And the different check marks will tell you whether the person has in the hundreds, in the thousands, or in the tens of thousands of paid subscribers. So you can kind of do a little back of the envelope on big people. It's good advertising for those publishers, it's social proof, and it's good advertising for Substack, because you do see that people at the top of the leaderboards, they do have in the tens of thousands, and sometimes in finance, people are charging significant monthly and annual sums for it. Right.
And okay, so then getting down into like how the discovery works then. So you said it's an opt-in process. Is that what it is? Is I'm making relationships with other publishers and kind of putting them in my recommended readers spot and back and forth. And so it's the relationships you build with other Substack writers. And so it makes it a very easy kind of way to network with each other. Is that
Part of it is relationships, and part of it is still on Substack and what Substack does. I'll talk about the relationship piece first. Well, what I should talk about first is our data shows that the number one way people get new subscribers is simply their readers sharing, their readers forwarding. And we try to optimize it and set everything up so that there are, there are subscribe buttons everywhere and there are share buttons everywhere. And if one of your readers sees a share button and they click it, it's going to be so easy for them to share it by email with a friend of theirs, or share it on their Facebook, or share it on their LinkedIn. So first of all, the sharing, and we build a tool so people can easily drop in a share button. You don't have to know how to code it. It's very simple. So the first thing, always important, is the sharing. And we do try to, we're trying to sand down the friction as much as possible so people will do that. And then I mentioned about recommendations because when we did introduce that, it ended up being a very powerful tool. And it's funny because anybody who's been on the internet a long time, I describe recommendations, they say, well, that's a blog roll. You haven't invented anything. It's true, it is. It is a way to create more cross-pollination within Substack, because briefly the way it works is when you have a Substack, you can recommend some number of other publishers. You can recommend 3, you can recommend 10, you can recommend 85 if you want. But what happens with those is they appear on your publication page on the right-hand side, but more critically, they appear after somebody signs up for your Substack, or so they finish signing up for yours for free or paid. Then a screen comes up and says, would you like to subscribe to these other? And it'll only pick 3. It won't show 85. It'll only pick 3. And what works about that is the social proof aspect. People who use Substack, they know that, and some people will hear this and say, oh, I'm familiar with that from the point of view of their paid versions of this.
Mhm.
In the Substack universe, this is all just people saying, hey, I really do like these other publishers. And then the most important part of all is if people sign up for those other publishers because of your advocacy, they get a notification that says, oh, Linda recommended your Substack and you got a sign up because of that. Would you like to recommend her back? We're really trying to get people to make these subcategories. So if somebody writes about semiconductors, he'll recommend the 2 other guys on Substack who write about semiconductors. Even though they are competing, they still feel like we're going to, and again, I should say, nobody has to do this. There are people on Substack who say, I'm not going to do the recommendations. There are other people who just, turn it on and hope for the best. But there are other people who turn it on and then they go and email people and they say, hey, I recommended you. Would you be interested in take a look at my stuff and see if you want to recommend me back? So getting back to your comment about relationships, this is where, and a lot of people listening to this will know that it is relationships, and it is people recommending each other and people saying it may be the same audience may be interested in something new. So we are trying to introduce a group of users who may not know a lot about these techniques and say, we're going to make it so you just click yes and do it. And I think that recommendations piece has helped a lot. And we have other things along those lines where, for example, I can take a post on somebody else's Substack and very easily cross-post it to my list with a short paragraph of introduction from me. Here's something I read today. I found it interesting. Maybe you will too. If you do, why don't you subscribe to his? Or if I mention somebody else on Substack, it becomes a clickable link and they can easily, you can hear in all this, it is trying to make it a network of networks so that people can find, and I'll mention one last thing. If you use a stock ticker with a hashtag, people can click on it and they can see what are some other publications that wrote posts that mention that hashtag. Well, this is, again, going back to my semiconductor example, a nice way to, I'm reading about one stock, maybe here's a way for me to find out about people writing about those other stocks. So we're trying to build these things in as much as possible. It works automatically in the background, but for the writers who choose to lean in and say, I want to make best use of this, it can end up being quite powerful then, and the benefit compounds over time.
Nice. Yeah, it's like you have to almost like you have the blog roll set up, but it's and then you have like, post opt-in, which is like prime real estate, kind of almost a co-registration recommendation kind of feature.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff, I think it is funny, like having been, doing a FinPub conference for 10 years, there's the stages of everything that I know. Like a new publisher comes in, there's things you're going to resist, right? Oh, I'm not gonna be super salesy ever. I'm not going to I don't want to recommend anybody else because I have to protect my subscribers. They're gonna die if I give them, somebody else's stuff, or I'm gonna lose money. And the reality is that, like, direct response businesses like these are, right? Because you have, 1,000 people come or 100 people come to your newsletter. 1 to 3% is where you're looking at probably capturing into paid. That means that 97 to 98 to 99% of the people who show up and even express interest in like the free stuff is never going to be your customer. There is way more benefit to finding your customer in that 99 people on another person's list than it is to protect that 99 people who aren't going to give you money from anybody else ever seeing them, in the hopes that you're going to get a couple more of them to come in. And so like we have like a very, like the established financial publishing industry has a very, very kind of open and kind of sharing kind of relationship with each other. You'll see a lot of the top affiliates will like share what's working best for them. They'll tell you whose stuff is converting. There's a lot of swaps, a lot of affiliate, cross promotion back and forth. And I think that as everyone progresses in the business, they start to see the value of that, because you can add a ton of revenue. It keeps your list building, and it doesn't subtract from the business the way that a lot of people assume that it will. Now, that doesn't mean you recommend things that you don't like. Like if you wouldn't recommend it, you don't. But like that shutting down of that possibility of doing it at all is always, in my mind, a mistake. If it's just an arbitrary, like, no, absolutely not.
It so resonates with me what you said about most of your audience will never pay. I think once, and again, a lot of the publishers I work with, they come to Substack because they're coming from Wall Street, they're coming from industry, they've been bloggers, they have not had digital media, digital marketing experience. So sometimes they'll be very focused on, okay, I have 7,000 people who signed up for me and 5% of them are paying. And Linda, what should I do? They're infuriated by this 95% that's not paying. And yeah. I'm sort of like anybody in newsletter publishing would laugh, because I'm saying to them, I'm thinking, how do I use non-marketing language to get this person to think about the top of their funnel? That's it. Just new people, maybe somebody can recommend you. Maybe, you can focus on your social. Are you making best use of your social media accounts? Well, no, I haven't mentioned my Substack on my LinkedIn at all. Well, maybe you should do that. We need to find new people to come in the top, rather than sort of resenting this 90 or 95%, because it's tough to break to somebody that they will never pay. But it is really, again, it speaks to what is a priority for businesses and what's a priority for Substack is just bring new, fresh people into the ecosystem. And the best, I also say to them, well, the best person who may become a paying subscriber to you, if they're already a paying subscriber to somebody else, their credit card number is already typed into the sign up page. Again, little reduction in friction when they get to the subscribe page. Yeah, and all those things add up. And that's why I think people should, should consider, if you're putting something out every day, like you could have a Substack running in parallel to the things you already have existing. And that's one of the things that I like about your platform, is that it's not like you're not exclusive. Someone's not forced to say you're either on Substack or you're not. It's a very open kind of relationship, that someone can come in and kind of just take advantage of the benefits. And that's a really attractive feature to me. And so over the last, 2 years, you guys have added, I'd say, more social functions, like the notes and things like that. Could you kind of talk through like what those are and how are they working out for publishers? Really is what I want to know. Yeah. Are they helpful? Notes is the Substack app broadly is, again, for years, writers were saying to us, we want you to have an app and we want to be able to do a few things. We want people to find us on the app. We want you to surface us in the app. We want to be able to write in the app so we can write on the go. And we want to be able to obviously read everything from Substack in the app. So when we first built it, it was very rudimentary. But now over the past 2 years, we have introduced a really key thing was Substack Notes. And when we first came out with Notes, which is if people download the Substack app, they'll see this right away. You will have a queue of all the posts from all the Substacks you read. That's at the top because that's the most important thing. But then there's also a short form posting feed. Looks a lot like Twitter or X or any other social media, where it's a place for people to do lightweight posting. It's not their entire posts, and they can be kind of in the mix. So we'll have different tabs. Like right now we have a tab called US Politics. That's because we're in the midst of a presidential election in the US. There's a lot of activity there. There's a tab for New York Fashion Week. There's a tab for finance in general. So you can see our idea with this surface is, again, it's a new place for people to find new stuff to read. Nobody who's on Substack has to use that. They can just, and some people have just chosen to keep doing their traditional posting. But we're trying to respond to, again, people complaining, oh, I feel like I have to be out on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on any other place where I find people all the time. Or they're saying, I feel like if my growth has leveled off, should I start doing paid ads? And we want to as much as possible, because most people on Substack are, like I said, one-person shows. And we want them to, as much as possible, able to use organic means to be able to show their content, their written, their video, their podcasting content to whoever is going to find it useful. So the whole, not so secret idea behind the app is, again, just to bring new people into the ecosystem, and that if somebody downloads the app, they'll be able to just find new stuff they're interested in and make life easier for the writers. When we introduced the ability to actually write posts in the app, longtime writers on Substack were very happy, very appreciative. They would tell us stories about, oh, I'm holding my son in one hand and writing a post with the other. So our goal in life is to make it easier. And then the other thing we're working on in parallel with the app is giving people more ways to put audio and video into their posts, most of which people are doing in a very lightweight way. People are not doing fully, because again, most people don't have the capacity or the interest to do all kinds of complicated editing. What they're doing is doing something like this podcast, where they just do it on Zoom and record it, or something like where they hold up their phone and make some casual video. But adding that to a Substack really makes people feel more connected and more bonded and more intimate with the writer, even if it is finance and business content. So we're trying to give, and sometimes we want to give people a way to say, all right, not everything that you send out has to be some perfectly polished 2,000 word gem of a post. Maybe you could just do it as an audio file that's like sending a voicemail to your audience. And people do like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the nice thing, is like you built the capacity for small operators to kind of put their whole media business in one spot. But it's also the ease of sharing allows you to then publish it across all your other kind of social too. So that's a nice, it's like kind of a digital home for somebody who's trying to build a media business when you're really trying to get going. And I think that's why, like, I think Porter was on there too, Porter Stansberry, at one point.
Yeah.
That's when he launched the business. That's how he was like, let's just get it out. And they were like, we're gonna put it there until they get it up. And now they're doing, tens of millions, and they move off. But like,
and them not being on Substack anymore is a good example where I think people should feel like there's a lot more freedom than people may think. You can come on Substack, you can build a list, you can have subscriptions. And if you ever decide, okay, well, this has aspects that are not totally fulfilling me, I will probably talk to you and try to influence you to stay on Substack. But if it ever doesn't fit, and this is so important now, people do not want to be handcuffed to a marriage with a technology partner. It's crazy. So we have built something where people can completely leave if they want. But in a lot of cases, people have built fairly large businesses on Substack, and you would think, okay, as people get more and more and are making millions, are they tempted to leave because of the expense? Well, again, a lot of people in your audience will know, as you get a bigger and more complex businesses, the costs do rise significantly, particularly the cost of like edge cases of like your website goes down the day you do a big promotion, just the headaches around tech. So we have found a lot of people, as they become big, have stayed. But the good thing is, if you are on Substack, you always have the insurance of the exit sign is always the lights turned on. And the other thing is, we are, and you touched on this, if you have something going on Substack and you have something on your own website, or you have something on a different platform, that's completely permissible. We're happy to partner. We have to prove ourselves that we're worthwhile as a partner for whatever piece of your business where it makes sense. And I think for some people, part of their business or experimental pieces in their business might make sense, even just to start on Substack.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Like, kind of we have an idea. Let's see what kind of traction we can get without putting a lot of staff behind it. That's a really great use case as well. So one of the big things about a publishing business anymore is that the business is kind of two things: it's customers in, email out. And because of that, like, your deliverability can make or break the business, right? And so at like some of the larger scales, when people are getting into like the millions of mails a month, like they're doing more custom stuff. But like, from everyone I've talked to, the deliverability you guys have seems to be really solid. Do you guys have any kind of stats on that? Like, what's any, we've had a lot of changes obviously in the the email space lately. How does that kind of work for you guys, and what's the team there doing? I mean,
yeah, I think our deliverability being what it is really the investment of, from the very first day of Substack, just protecting the domain authority of Substack.com like the holy grail. So you think anybody can come to Substack, they can import a list, and they can start firing out emails. The minute you hear that, the most predatory people on the internet are going to take advantage of it. So from day one, I would say I'm complimenting my coworkers, but I would say the systems team of Substack has, by both automated and manual means, really defended the fortress. And here's an aspect that helps. When you come on Substack, everybody has a subdomain.substack.com. You can redirect a custom URL and you can have your Substack be called yourbrandname.com. But the emails, when you send them from Substack, always come from brandname@substack.com. So you are always piggybacking on the domain authority of substack.com. So that is really an asset of Substack. That's one of our most valuable assets. So we really protect that, and we have been careful not to allow spammers to use Substack. And as time goes on, you just get a better and better authority around it. And again, people will know to start up a business today and start sending from your own domain, you have to do a warming process. You have to be very smart about this, because Substack likes to say you need to use email, because not everybody appreciates this. You do, obviously, but a lot of people don't appreciate how important email is, rather than just sending out stuff on social media. And we always say you need to have a direct email relationship with your reader, with your audience, with your customer. But there's still a choke point, which is the email platforms, right? So we have to really read the tea leaves and behave well. And people do not, Gmail, Apple Mail, they do not disclose what is going to trigger them. They never do. Right. So we have the benefit of scale. We have the benefit of sending all these millions of emails to read the patterns that are in there. And we just really defend our deliverability well. So you asked about stats. I don't have numerical stats that might be satisfying. I asked, but we don't have anything numerical that we disclose. But what we do, we are finding that it's industry leading. It can never be 100%, but people have had a good experience. And again, when people are coming in, they don't have a lot of experience working with email. They have a very high standard. Their standard is whatever their personal email is, which that it lands there 100% of the time and never goes to spam. So that's what people start from, an expectation of perfection. So I think that we've done fairly well. And I do think that a consideration for anyone thinking of, oh, I want to set up my own stuff, or I want to do an experiment around something, is the ease of just going on. Okay, I'll just send it from Substack, and I know it's going to do a good job getting there. That is just one less technical thing that you have to fret about.
Makes sense. So yeah, I think like the growth you guys have experienced. Well, let me go back. You guys have had from the beginning a very kind of strong stance on essentially non-censorship, right? Like free speech has been a very, very core part, and that was very important, obviously, in the kind of the COVID years, when there was a lot of stuff around that, and a lot of things that you say can, like, we see this, and there's a lot of, because the FinPub universe, there's different parts of it, but one of the larger segments is a very conservative kind of older guy, and people who talk politics can get shut down not too much in their email. It can become a problem anyway. Have you guys had any issues with that? Have you had any experiences with that, like where somebody's sending stuff out and because it offends the politics of a different group at one of the ESPs, that they have problems, or has that not really been an issue?
I think that we have not. When I say we haven't had issues, we've had issues with people thinking that Substack, people taking issue and having a problem with Substack's policy, because the ecosystem of the entire internet has gotten very used to, it's the job of the platform to police. But the founders of Substack came out from the beginning and said, we are not going to police, and we are going to have a hands-off content moderation policy, and you're not allowed to break the law on Substack. But if you are, you may say something that we may disagree with even profoundly, but you will not be taken off. So, you mentioned COVID, and that was one for us where people may have been saying things on COVID that you or I completely disagree with either way. And people would complain and, we can't believe this. We're going to boycott Substack. But I think that when you stick to your guns around that kind of thing, people sort of learn what it is. And fundamentally, people can choose to not be on Substack if they prefer to be on a platform that does police. But I mean, we could, have a whole debate about what that set of standards is, and that's partly why we take this tack. So I think that we have had a good experience with sticking to our initial policies and just clearly stating it, always having the founders say the exact same thing in public. And then really, we have had writers thank us and say, I really feel that you guys are good partners because I may have been taken off other platforms at various times, rightly or wrongly, that they disobeyed whatever their policies were. But Substack has always been very clear. And I think in the end, it's good for both to me, it's good from an ethical point of view, and it's also good from a business point of view, because we've just our response to people not liking the fact that we have a hands-off content moderation policy has always been, on Substack, you can choose to unsubscribe from what you disagree with, and that is it. We're not putting things forcibly into your email inbox. If you see something you don't like, you can unsubscribe from it. So we have not had issues with any kind of issues with the email service providers or with our payment provider, which is Stripe. There's never, always the issue has, if we've had one, has been with people saying, hey, you guys should have a stricter content moderation policy than you do. You should, this X piece of content, we understand about free speech, but X piece of content you got to get rid of. And we have always just been consistent. I should say we have a content moderation policy that does disallow some things at the extremes. It's not like anything goes. If I go on Substack and make threats, that's not allowed. But we have, I think, now proven ourselves, and the writers truly have thanked us for it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I think it's definitely been an issue. I know people who've been deplatformed for things, and you're like, that guy was deplatformed for that? Like, you're kind of surprised. And so if somebody's thinking about, like, obviously it's very easy to start a Substack. I mean, it takes no time at all to get going. But if somebody has any more questions about, like, kind of, hey, I have a publishing business, this is where I'm at, and they want to talk, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say they can send me an email. It's like just linda@substackinc.com. If they want to send me an email directly, anybody who is listening to this podcast, I would be delighted to talk to. You can also download the Substack app, and I'm on there. I'm at Linda on that. But yeah, if you're thinking about this or want to put a toe in, or just, want 15 minutes of, okay, how does this work if I did want to set up, I'd be delighted to chat. We are interested in talking to you. If people want to come on and experiment with Substack, as you can tell from everything I've said, we just have sort of an open mind to all different types of content. And I mean, John, you would laugh, because when I came to Substack, I think people at Substack, they were in Silicon Valley in San Francisco, they didn't know that the established newsletter publishing industry even existed. And I remember when Bill Bonner came, and I was like losing my mind, and they were like, oh, is that a big person? I was like, I'm gonna tell you guys who this is. So that it's all by way of saying, I think that both Substack and all of Substack competitors want to serve, and it's nice. Maybe it's more competitive than it used to be, but it's easier to get started and try things and experiment with no capital up front than it used to be. So that's long story, but I would love to chat if people want to know more.
I think that what Substack's done some really wonderful things for the industry. One, it's created a new sector of, there's a lot of people, like you said, who were like, they were in professional finance and where they were analysts, and they had a Twitter following, or they had something else, and they didn't have the basic understanding of digital marketing to where, like, I'm going to go figure out how to start a newsletter or anything like that. And Substack allowed them to create newsletters very quickly, very easily, monetize them very well. It's created a boom, and I saw, like, kind of the independent small side of the industry. And we know just, some of those are going to grow to very large size over time. It's created a lot of really great new potential affiliate partners for people, new relationships. It's really done a lot for, I think, the space. And I don't think that all the potential of how these kind of ecosystems can work together has been realized yet. And that's why I wanted to kind of talk to you. And I'm glad that you reached out for, because I think there is a lot that, like, there's a lot of benefit that the established groups can come and show, like, hey, there's a lot of ways for you to make money here. You don't have to do them all the things that we do, but there's a lot of extra things that some of these newsletter writers can do. And then on the same side, I think there's a lot of really high quality analysts there that can also do deals back and forth. And there's just, it's added a lot of good energy. And so I love it.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think that Substack has been a place where people have come, and even if you're one person, and by building something for 6 months or a year, you can replace the income that you had working for somebody else, that's great. And that was possible to do 5 or 10 years ago, but much harder as a solo person. So I think that if we've done that, and then that person, so we could go to a next phase where, like you said, there's more cross-pollination, there's more working together, people working together who are on Substack and off Substack. And we want to see that. I just think it's very good for the writers. It's very good for anybody trying to independently create content that's about trading, macro, or anything else. You do not need a big sponsor. You do not need to have a gatekeeper now. You can go direct, and that's cool.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I'm low on expertise anymore. There's a lot of really great expertise out there that has been locked away inside businesses that in careers that they're not accessible, and you guys have done a lot to make a lot of that expertise available and give them a reason and a way to monetize themselves. And so I think, again, anyone in FinPub who's spending money acquiring customers, like, there's something here where if you can get, you get guys who are basically doing $1 million to $5 million businesses and getting 20 to 30% of their business from referrals on Substack, that's an opportunity. So yeah, I encourage people to explore it. Thanks so much, Linda, for being here. I really appreciate this. It's great.
Thank you too. Love the conversation. Thanks, John.